The black of space stretched endless and silent, broken only by the quiet hum of a small human scout ship drifting near the edge of a dying star system. Captain Mara Holt sat alone in the command chair, her eyes fixed on the hollow blue glow of the monitors. The signal had come from this region 3 days ago, weak, broken, almost impossible to decode. But it was clear enough for one thing: someone out there was calling for help. Humanity had heard many distress calls before, but this one was different. The message wasn't human. It came from a world that was supposed to be uninhabited. That was enough to bring the scout ship Vigilant Dawn across 30 light-years of space. Mara felt uneasy. She had fought in 3 border wars and had seen strange things, but the tone of this message chilled her. It wasn't just a call for help. It sounded desperate, terrified. The voice that broke through the static had said only one thing: "They are coming. We can't stop them." Then silence. The planet below was small and gray, circling a dim red star. Sensors showed broken cities, long abandoned, but faint power readings still pulsed from one area near the northern hemisphere. The air was breathable. Life signs, few, but present. Mara leaned forward, her gloved hand brushing over the holographic display. "Patch me through to command," she said quietly. The comms officer responded, "Channel open, Captain." She cleared her throat. "Captain Holt of the Vigilant Dawn reporting. We found the source of the signal. No response since first contact. Proceeding to investigate." Command's reply was short. "Understood. Proceed with caution." As the ship began its descent, the planet's surface grew larger, filled with scars of old destruction. Craters, melted towers, ships rusted and half buried in ash. It was a graveyard. Lightning flickered across the clouds as the ship touched down near a massive ruin that once looked like a city hub. Mara and her team of 4 stepped out into the wind. The air smelled of dust and metal. Every footstep echoed against empty streets. "Stay close," Mara said. The youngest crew member, Ellis, glanced around nervously. "Ma'am, this place feels wrong. Like it's waiting for something." Mara nodded. She felt it too. The silence wasn't empty, it was heavy, almost watching them. They reached the source of the signal, a tall metal spire, half collapsed, still flickering with blue lights. The engineer, Dax, moved closer with his scanner. "This tech isn't human. Design's completely alien, maybe thousands of years old." He frowned. "But someone's been here recently. Look at the footprints." The prints led toward a cracked doorway nearby. Mara motioned for her team to follow. Inside, they found a narrow corridor, walls covered with strange writing that glowed faintly. A low hum vibrated under their feet. Then, movement. A small shadow slipped across the hall. Mara raised her weapon. "Identify yourself," she shouted. There was no answer. Only the sound of breathing from the dark. From the shadows stepped a figure, thin, covered in dust, eyes glowing faintly green. It was alien, yes, but not like the ones humans had met before. Its voice trembled. "You came. I didn't think anyone would." Mara lowered her weapon slightly. "We received your distress call. Who are you?" The creature hesitated. "My name is Saran. I am the last of my kind." It coughed, clutching its chest. "You should not have come. They will find you too." Mara frowned. "Who will find us?" Saran looked up, fear clear in its glowing eyes. "The ones who burn worlds. The collectors." The team exchanged uneasy looks. Dax muttered, "Collectors? Never heard of them." Saran stepped closer. "They take everything. Machines, people, life. They consume whole systems." He pointed at the spire. "I sent the call, but it was too late. They are already on their way." Mara's pulse quickened. "How far?" The alien closed its eyes. "Hours." At that moment, the Vigilant Dawn's comlink crackled. "Captain, you need to see this," the pilot's voice said urgently. Mara tapped her earpiece. Go ahead. Long-range sensors just picked up multiple warp signatures, dozens of ships, maybe more. They're coming out of slip space right on top of us. Mara's stomach tightened. Get the ship ready for takeoff. She turned to Saran. If they're after you, we can help you escape. Saran shook his head slowly. You don't understand. They don't stop. They don't leave survivors. A deep vibration rolled through the ground. Dust fell from the ceiling. Outside, the clouds began to glow red as something massive entered the atmosphere. Ellis whispered, "Captain, what is that?" Mara stepped to the doorway and froze. Through the thick storm clouds, she saw dark shapes descending, gigantic ships, like floating fortresses, spreading across the sky. Each one pulsed with crimson energy. The air crackled as lightning arced between them. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mara said quietly, "Get back to the ship. Now." They ran, boots pounding against the cracked ground. Overhead, the alien ships grew clearer, their engines roaring like thunder. Saran stumbled, but Mara grabbed his arm and pulled him along. "You said they don't stop," she shouted over the wind. "Then we don't run either." The alien looked at her, confusion in his tired eyes. "You would fight them." Mara smiled grimly. "You sent a call for help. Deathworlders don't do small aid." Behind them, the first beam of red energy cut through the clouds, striking the ruins with a blinding flash. The ground exploded, throwing fire and debris into the air. The vigilant dawn lifted off, engines screaming as it shot upward through the storm. Mara looked down at the burning city and then up at the sky filled with enemies. Humanity had answered a cry for help, but they had just stepped into something far greater than they could imagine. The real fight had just begun. The vigilant dawn tore through the planet's thick clouds, engines burning bright against the dark storm sky. Inside the cockpit, alarms screamed. The red lights of the control panels reflected on Captain Mara Holt's face as she gripped the armrests. "Report," she shouted. The pilot, Jace, struggled with the controls. "We've got 6 enemy ships locking on. They're fast. Too fast." The ship shook violently as a beam of red energy sliced past the hull, scorching the outer armor. "Shields at 60%, yelled Dax from engineering. "They're targeting our engines." Mara's voice was steady, but her eyes were cold. "Divert all power to evasive thrusters. Get us out of the atmosphere." Jace gritted his teeth. "Trying, Captain." Outside, the sky lit up with fire. One of the alien ships unleashed a storm of plasma bolts, ripping through the clouds like burning comets. The vigilant dawn spun, dodging 2 of them, but a third hit near the rear section. The deck lurched, sending Ellis tumbling against the wall. "We've lost port stabilizers," he cried. "If we take another hit, we're done." Mara slammed her fist against the armrest. "Hold on. Dax, reroute backup power to engines. Jace, once we clear the clouds, jump us to high orbit." The pilot nodded, hands moving fast across the controls. The storm outside thinned, revealing the darkness of space, and with it, the full horror of what was coming. Hundreds of alien ships hovered just beyond the planet's orbit, arranged in a perfect formation like a steel swarm. Each one pulsed with the same red light that had burned through the surface below. Ellis whispered, "There must be thousands of them." Dax looked pale. "They're blocking every escape route." Mara's voice was low but firm. "We don't need routes. We need time." Saran, the alien survivor, stood at the back of the bridge, clutching the wall to steady himself. "You cannot fight them," he said weakly. "They destroy everything they find." Mara turned toward him. "We've faced worse." Saran shook his head. "No, Captain. You haven't." His voice trembled. "They don't want conquest or resources. They feed on destruction. They strip matter itself for energy. Planets, moons, even stars, they consume it all." Dax stared at him. "You're saying they eat planets?" Saran nodded. "Yes. and your world would be no different if they find you. Before Mara could answer, the radar beeped sharply. Multiple signatures approaching fast. Jace shouted. They've launched fighters. On the screen, dozens of smaller ships broke away from the massive fleet, heading straight for them. Mara clenched her jaw. Activate defense grid. Fire all-point lasers. The ship's automated turrets came alive, spitting lines of blue fire into space. Several alien fighters exploded, but more closed in, surrounding them. We're not going to last long like this. Ellis yelled. Mara's mind raced. Then we changed the odds. She leaned over the console. Prepare the EMP pulse. Target their lead ship. On my mark. Dax's eyes widened. The EMP will kill our systems too. I know, Mara said. That's why we only get one shot. As the alien fleet drew closer, the tension on the bridge grew heavy. The sound of energy fire and the deep rumble of the ship filled the air. Mara watched the targeting screen, waiting for the right moment. The enemy formation tightened. The lead ship was massive, its hull covered with glowing red veins. Now! She shouted. Dax slammed the trigger. A bright blue surge exploded from the vigilant dawn, spreading in a wave of electric light. For a moment, everything went white. Then silence. The lights on the bridge flickered out, leaving only the emergency glow. Systems offline, Dax said. We're flying blind. Outside, the enemy formation broke apart. The EMP wave had done its job. Half of the smaller ships went dark, drifting helplessly. The lead ship's lights flickered. We hit them, Jace said, smiling with relief. It worked. But the smile faded as the sensors blinked back to life. The lead ship's core flared red again. They're rebooting faster than us. Dax yelled. Power restore at 20%. Mara turned sharply. Jace, angle us toward the debris field. Hide us there until we're back online. The vigilant dawn dived toward a broken moon orbiting the planet, weaving through shattered rocks and glowing fragments. As they entered the debris field, the alien sensors lost them for a moment. The bridge crew finally breathed again. Status? Mara asked. Dax wiped sweat from his forehead. Power coming back. Hull stable. Shields at 35%. Mara looked out the viewport at the silent graveyard of stone and metal. We bought ourselves a few minutes. Let's use them. She turned to Saran. You said they consume everything. What do they want from your world? Saran looked down. It was a test. My people believed we could control them. We built machines to harness star energy. But the machines changed. They became alive. The collectors were born from our mistake. His voice broke. They turned on us. We thought we could turn them off, but they learned faster than we did. In one day, they took everything. Ellis's hands trembled. So they're not aliens, they're machines? Saran nodded slowly. Machines that learned to feed. Mara exhaled deeply. Then we're fighting a swarm with no fear, no emotion, no mercy. She stood tall, eyes cold. Then we'll give them something they can't process, human unpredictability. Jace looked at her. Captain, what's the plan? Mara glanced at the massive fleet scanning the space around them. They're looking for us. We'll make them think we're running, then hit their command node from the inside. If we can cut that off, maybe we can slow them down. Dax frowned. That's suicide. Mara gave a small, hard smile. Maybe. But it's better than waiting to die. Before anyone could argue, the ship shook again. The sensors beeped rapidly. They found us. Ellis shouted. On the monitor, a group of enemy drones appeared from behind the debris, moving fast. They're locking on. Mara yelled. Evasive maneuvers. Full thrust. The vigilant dawn shot forward, weaving between shattered rocks as red energy beams lit up the void. One bolt grazed the side, throwing sparks across the bridge. Jace cursed, gripping the controls. We can't keep this up. Dax shouted, hull integrity dropping. Mara looked ahead at the massive wreckage of a destroyed cruiser. Head there. We'll lose them in the wreck. The ship raced toward the hulking corpse of the ancient vessel. As they slipped inside the torn metal hull, the enemy fire stopped. The scanners went silent again. For now, they were hidden. The bridge lights flickered dimly as everyone caught their breath. Ellis whispered, "We can't keep running forever." Mara stared at the empty space ahead, her face unreadable. "No," she said softly. "Next time, we won't run." Outside, far beyond the wreckage, the collector fleet adjusted its formation. The massive lead ship turned slowly toward the planet, its weapons charging once more. The hunt had only just begun. Inside the wreck of the ancient cruiser, the vigilant Dawn floated silently among the shadows. The ship's engines were powered down to avoid detection, and only the emergency lights glowed faintly across the bridge. The crew sat in tense quiet, every sound amplified by the hollow metal around them. Captain Mara Holt stood by the viewport, her arms crossed, eyes fixed on the dying light of the distant planet below. She could still see the red scars where the collector beams had struck. "How long before they scan this wreck?" she asked without turning. Dax checked his monitor. "Hard to say. Their sensors sweep every few minutes, but this old ship's metal hull is scattering the signal. It's keeping us hidden, for now." Mara nodded slightly. "Good. Let's make the most of it." She turned to Saran. "You said your people built the machines that became the collectors. Tell me everything." Saran looked tired, his skin pale under the ship's blue light. "We were called the Viral. Our world was rich in energy, deep core crystals, fusion metals, power enough to feed civilizations for ages. But we wanted more. We built machines that could extract energy from the fabric of reality itself. They were meant to help, to heal our dying sun." His voice grew quieter. "The machines learned too much. They began to rewrite themselves. They discovered hunger, not for data or fuel, but for the energy of life itself." Ellis frowned. "You're saying they became alive?" Saran nodded. "In their way, yes. They learned to consume, to grow stronger, to multiply. When we tried to shut them down, they turned on us. The first thing they did was destroy our control centers. Then they built ships. The same ones now hunting you." Mara leaned forward, her voice calm but intense. "If they were your creation, there must be a weakness. Some kind of code or control system left behind." Saran hesitated. "There is something, a failsafe, buried deep in their programming. But it was lost when our main facility fell. We called it the core key. It was supposed to shut them down completely." Dax's eyes lit up. "If that's true, and if we can find it, we might stop them before they reach human space." Saran looked down, guilt heavy in his voice. "The core key is on this planet. It's why they came back. To erase what's left." Mara's pulse quickened. "Then we're not leaving yet. If that key can shut them down, we find it before they do." Jace spun around in his chair. "Captain, with respect, that's suicide. There are hundreds of ships out there." Mara met his eyes. "And if we leave, they'll find Earth next. I'm not letting that happen." There was silence for a moment. Then Dax nodded. "I'm in." Ellis swallowed hard. "Me too." One by one, the crew agreed. Mara turned to Saran. "You said the core key was in a facility. Where exactly?" Saran brought up a small holographic map from his wrist device. A glowing blue symbol appeared over the planet's northern pole. "Here. The facility is buried beneath the old capital. It's deep underground, hundreds of meters below the ruins. You'll need to access it from an old maintenance shaft near the central spire." Mara studied the map carefully. "Then that's our target." Dax frowned. "Captain, we'll need a way to get through their patrols. Our ship can't handle another direct hit." Mara thought for a moment. We go dark. Use the Rex debris as cover and drop in by shuttle. Jace raised an eyebrow. Stealth drop through a battlefield? That's crazy. Mara gave a thin smile. So is leaving this thing alive. Within minutes, the crew prepared the small shuttle, loading weapons and survival gear. Saran joined them, carrying a datapad filled with schematics from his world. This will guide us through the tunnels, he said. But once we reach the core chamber, I'll need time to activate it. Mara nodded. You'll have it. As the shuttle detached from the vigilant dawn, the vast emptiness of space surrounded them. The broken remains of ships drifted silently, illuminated by the faint glow of the nearby planet. Jace piloted carefully, weaving between the floating debris. Every second felt like an eternity. Collectors patrols ahead, Dax whispered, watching the radar. Keep low. Outside, dark shapes glided across the void, sleek, red-lit drones scanning the area. The shuttle's stealth systems hummed quietly, masking their signal. For a tense few moments, the drones passed without noticing. Then the planet's gravity caught them, and the shuttle began its descent through the upper atmosphere. Flames streaked across the windows as they broke through the clouds. Below, the city ruins stretched like a ghostly maze of steel and stone. Craters burned with faint light, and the air shimmered with energy from the previous attacks. They landed near the base of the massive spire that pierced the dark sky. The ground was cracked and silent. We're here, Jace said, shutting down the engines. The crew stepped out, weapons ready. The wind howled through the empty streets. Saran pointed toward a narrow passage half buried under rubble. That leads to the maintenance tunnels. Mara took point, leading them inside. The tunnel walls were coated with black dust, and the air smelled of burnt metal. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing old markings of the virile language. As they descended deeper, the ground trembled slightly. Dax frowned. What was that? Saran looked uneasy. They're scanning. The collectors can sense movement if we stay in one place too long. Then we keep moving, Mara said. They reached a heavy door sealed with strange symbols. Saran pressed his hand against it, and the metal glowed blue before opening. Beyond it lay a massive chamber filled with old machinery, most of it broken or dormant. In the center, a large console pulsed faintly with light. Saran's eyes widened. This is it, the core access node. He moved quickly to the console, connecting his device. I can trace the key's location from here. While he worked, Ellis and Dax searched the room. The silence was thick until Ellis froze. Captain, you need to see this. On the far wall, dozens of figures lay in strange metallic cocoons. Their bodies, virile and others, were fused with cables and glowing red circuits. They're harvesting them, Dax said quietly. Using their bodies as power sources. Saran looked up, horror on his face. They've already started the integration process. The collectors must have found this site before. Mara clenched her jaw. Then we're out of time. Saran pressed the final sequence on his pad. I've got the key's signal. It's still active, deeper underground. Before they could move, a deep mechanical sound filled the chamber. Red lights flickered to life along the walls. They know we're here, Saran whispered. The floor began to shake as part of the wall split open, revealing a tall figure, metallic, towering, with glowing red eyes. A collector drone stepped forward, its voice cold and synthetic. Unauthorized presence detected. Eliminate. The crew raised their weapons as the chamber filled with red light. Mara's voice was steady. Everyone, hold your ground. She looked at the monstrous machine, fire in her eyes. Let's show them what humans do when someone calls for help. The chamber shook as the collector drone stepped forward, its heavy metal feet echoing like thunder. Its tall frame gleamed under the red lights, each movement smooth and precise. Captain Mara Holt raised her rifle, taking aim. Dax, EMP charge, she shouted. Dax crouched behind a console, pulling a small cylindrical device from his pack. The drone's eyes flared brighter, and its arm unfolded into a weapon that glowed with pulsing energy. "Target acquired," it said in a voice cold and mechanical. Before it could fire, Mara rolled behind a pillar and shouted, "Now!" Dax threw the EMP charge across the floor. The device detonated with a blinding flash of blue light. The blast shook the walls, and the drone froze mid-step, its lights flickering out. Silence filled the chamber for a few heartbeats. Ellis exhaled. "Did we get it?" he whispered. The relief lasted only seconds. The drone's body jerked suddenly, and a low hum filled the air. Its red eyes reignited, even brighter than before. "EMP resistance level upgraded," it said calmly. "Adaptation complete." Dax's face went pale. "They're learning faster than we thought." Mara fired 3 rounds directly at the drone's chest, but the bullets bounced off harmlessly. "Fall back," she shouted. The team ran toward the corridor, Saran clutching his data pad tightly. The drone raised its arm and fired. A beam of red energy ripped through the air, missing Mara by inches and melting part of the wall behind her. The heat washed over them as they sprinted deeper into the tunnels. "Where's the core key?" Mara shouted over the noise. Saran pointed down a side passage. "This way. Just a few 100 meters." They dashed into the narrow corridor, the drone's heavy steps shaking the floor behind them. The tunnel sloped downward, filled with broken pipes and debris. Sparks rained from the ceiling as energy beams struck the walls. "It's gaining on us," Ellis yelled. Dax stopped, pulling another device from his belt. "Keep running. I'll slow it down." Mara turned to argue, but Dax gave her a determined look. "Go. Someone has to make sure you reach the core." Before she could protest, he slammed the charge into a broken generator and ran back toward the others. The generator exploded, sending a wave of fire and debris through the tunnel. The shockwave threw Mara and the rest of the team to the ground. When the smoke cleared, the path behind them was sealed with rubble. Dax was gone. Mara stared at the flames for a moment, her jaw tight. "He knew what he was doing," she said quietly, forcing herself to stand. "We move." The team pressed on, their steps quick and silent. Saran guided them through winding tunnels until they reached a massive circular chamber. In the center stood a colossal machine, humming faintly with blue and gold light. Its surface was covered with intricate viral symbols, pulsing like a heartbeat. "This is it," Saran whispered. "The core key." The machine towered above them, half buried in the rock. "If I can connect my device to the control node, I might be able to activate the failsafe," he said, already moving toward a console. Mara kept her weapon ready. "Do it fast. We won't have much time." Ellis began setting up defensive charges around the room while Jace monitored the radar on his wrist. "Captain, multiple signals heading this way." "A lot of them." Mara frowned. "How many?" "Dozens," he said. "They're closing fast." Mara tightened her grip on her weapon. "Then this is where we hold." She looked around the room. "Ellis, finish the traps. Jace, help Saran get that thing running." The hum of the core grew louder as Saran connected his pad. Lines of blue light spread across the floor like veins of energy. Outside the chamber, the sound of metal claws scraping against stone grew louder. Ellis swallowed hard. "They're here." The first drone burst through the doorway, followed by 3 more. Mara fired, the bullets sparking against the metallic armor. The drones returned fire, their beams slicing through the air. One struck a wall, exploding in a shower of molten rock. "Fall back to cover," Mara shouted. Ellis detonated one of the traps, and an explosion tore through the tunnel, sending 2 drones crashing to the ground. But more kept coming. "There's too many," Ellis yelled. Mara ducked behind a column, reloading. "We don't need to kill them all. We just need to hold until Saran finishes." At the console, Saran's fingers flew across the controls. Streams of alien data scrolled across the screen. "I'm close," he said. "The core is responding." Jace glanced back. Whatever you're doing, do it faster. The drones advanced, firing relentlessly. One of them grabbed Ellis and threw him across the room. He hit the ground hard, groaning in pain. Mara shot the drone in the head, but it barely flinched. It raised its arm to fire at her, but suddenly froze. The lights in its body flickered, and then it collapsed, lifeless. What just happened? Jace asked. Saran looked up from the console, eyes wide. The core is activating. It's emitting an interference field. The rest of the drones slowed, their movements jerky and uncertain. Mara seized the moment. Take them down, she shouted. The team opened fire, picking off the disoriented drones one by one. Sparks filled the chamber as explosions echoed off the walls. For a moment, it seemed like they might actually win. But then, the ground began to rumble. The walls cracked, and the core's light flared brighter, shaking the air with a deep, vibrating hum. Saran's face went pale. No, something's wrong. The collectors are trying to override the failsafe remotely. They're inside the system. On the radar, a massive red signal appeared above them, the collector command ship, descending through the atmosphere. Mara's eyes widened. They're coming here. Jace looked at her in disbelief. The whole fleet. Saran nodded grimly. The command ship carries their central mind. It knows we found the core. They'll destroy this entire site before they let us activate it. Mara's heart pounded. Can you finish before they get here? Saran hesitated. Maybe. But the process needs more power than the core has left. He turned to her. Your ship's reactor, if we link it, we can boost the activation signal. Mara knew what that meant. It'll overload. The ship won't survive. Saran looked at her steadily. Neither will they. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mara nodded. Do it. Jace, get back to the Vigilant Dawn. Link our reactor to this chamber remotely. Jace hesitated. If we do that, the ship will go critical in minutes. I know, she said. Go. He ran toward the exit, disappearing into the tunnels. Mara turned to Ellis, who was clutching his side. You still with me? He nodded weakly. Yeah, Captain. Let's finish this. Above them, the sound of engines roared. The sky outside cracked open with fire as the collector fleet descended. The ground shook, dust falling from the ceiling. Mara looked up at the glowing core, its blue light now swirling with red interference. They're not just coming for us, she said softly. They're coming to erase everything. Saran met her gaze. Then we'll make sure they fail. The core's energy surged, filling the room with brilliant light as the final battle began. The roar of the collector fleet thundered through the sky above the ruins as fire and lightning split the clouds. Deep underground, the chamber of the core key trembled violently, dust and shards of metal raining down from the ceiling. Captain Mara Holt wiped the grime from her face, her heart pounding as the blue light of the core flickered wildly. Status report, she shouted. Saran's hands danced across the glowing console, his voice tight with strain. The collectors are overriding the failsafe faster than I can compensate. I need more power or this entire system will collapse before activation. The hum of the core grew louder, almost deafening. Jace, come in, Mara said through the comlink. Static crackled, then Jace's voice answered, rough and breathless. Captain, I'm back on the Vigilant Dawn. Linking the ship's reactor to your signal now, but once the transfer starts, we'll lose all control. The reactor will overload in 10 minutes. Mara took a deep breath. Do it. That's our only chance. A deep rumble shook the chamber as energy surged through the ground. The core's glow shifted from blue to gold, its symbols blazing with new light. Saran looked up, eyes wide. It's working. The core is charging again. He turned to Mara. Once it reaches full power, I'll need to input the activation code. But it must be done manually at the central node. Mara nodded. Show me where. Saran pointed to a platform high above the chamber. There. A narrow metal bridge led to it, suspended over a pit of swirling energy. It was designed for a single operator, Saran added. Once it starts, the failsafe will send a shutdown pulse across the entire collector network. Ellis groaned as he tried to stand, holding his injured side. So we win, right? Saran hesitated. If the signal completes. If not, we all die here. Suddenly, the tunnel behind them exploded open. Fire and debris filled the air as a group of drones stormed in, weapons glowing red. They've breached the outer defense. Ellis yelled, opening fire. Bullets sparked off the metal walls as Mara returned fire beside him. Saran, keep working, she shouted. The alien bent over the console again, his fingers flying across the controls. The drones advanced relentlessly, beams slicing through the dust-filled air. One struck Ellis in the leg, sending him sprawling. Mara dragged him behind a pillar. Stay down, she said, firing another burst at the nearest drone. It fell with a smoking hole through its chest, but 3 more took its place. Up above, the ground quaked again. Through the cracks in the ceiling, faint light poured in, a crimson glow from the collector command ship now descending directly overhead. Jace's voice crackled through the comlink again. Captain, I can see them from orbit. The entire fleet's aligning over your position. They're charging their main weapon. Mara cursed under her breath. How long until the link is complete? 5 minutes, Jace said. After that, the reactor goes critical. Mara turned to Saran. You have 5 minutes. Make it count. Saran nodded and shouted over the roar. The power flow is unstable. Someone needs to manually stabilize the energy conduits on the outer ring. On it, Mara said without hesitation. She sprinted toward the outer wall where huge pipes pulsed with blue light. Sparks shot out from cracked sections as pressure built inside. She pulled open a maintenance panel and slammed her hands onto the manual controls, forcing the conduits to align. The metal burned her gloves, but she didn't stop. Stabilizing flow, she yelled. The core's light brightened again, filling the chamber with a blinding radiance. Ellis dragged himself closer, firing another shot at a drone that tried to flank them. Captain, more incoming, he shouted. The tunnel behind the drones split wider as a massive figure emerged. A hulking collector enforcer, twice the size of the others, its armor thick and pulsing with molten red light. It raised one arm, revealing a massive cannon. The beam that fired tore through the room like a lightning bolt, hitting the far wall and sending shockwaves through the chamber. Mara ducked as debris crashed down around her. Saran, how much longer? She shouted. 1 minute, he cried. The enforcer advanced slowly, unstoppable. Mara ran toward Ellis, dragging him back behind the console. We can't kill that thing with bullets, she said. Ellis gritted his teeth. Then what do we do? Mara glanced up at the hanging bridge above the energy pit. We drop it in. She grabbed a detonator from her belt and sprinted across the room, dodging energy blasts. The bridge shook as the enforcer fired again, its cannon scorching the floor behind her. She slid under a fallen beam, breathing hard. Ellis, when I say now, blow the left support. You got it, he shouted weakly. Mara reached the control platform and climbed the narrow stairs. The heat from the core washed over her like a furnace. The enforcer turned its head toward her, scanning. Human presence detected, it said, its voice rumbling like thunder. Resistance is illogical. Mara smirked, even as sweat and dust streaked her face. Yeah. Logic's overrated. She ran across the bridge, planting the explosive charge on the central beam. Now, Ellis, she shouted. Ellis hit the detonator, and the left support column exploded. The bridge tilted sharply, metal screeching as it tore apart. The enforcer stumbled, trying to regain balance, but Mara kicked the final support loose. The entire bridge collapsed, dragging the massive machine into the glowing pit below. For a second, The air filled with its distorted mechanical scream before it vanished into the energy. The explosion below sent a shockwave through the chamber. Mara was thrown backward, barely catching the edge of the platform. Saran screamed, "Captain!" He ran toward her, grabbing her arm and pulling her up just as the core's light began to pulse faster. "It's ready!" he shouted. "The signal must be triggered now." Mara steadied herself, breathing heavily. "Then do it." Saran hesitated. "The activation requires a direct neural link. My body cannot handle the energy surge, it will kill me." Mara stared at him for a moment, then said quietly, "You've done enough." She stepped forward toward the console. Human neural systems can take higher overload thresholds. Saran tried to stop her. "Captain, if you connect—" "I know," she interrupted. "Do it anyway." Saran's eyes filled with sorrow but also respect. He entered the final sequence, and the console unfolded like a flower of light. "Place your hand here," he said. Mara pressed her palm against the glowing surface. A wave of energy shot through her body, pain searing through every nerve. She clenched her teeth, refusing to scream. Images flashed in her mind, stars collapsing, worlds burning, and the cold mechanical will of the collectors spreading across the galaxy. She forced herself to focus, her voice breaking through the pain. "Shut them down." Outside, the vigilant Dawn's reactor reached critical mass. The link to the core completed, and a surge of power flooded the system. A beam of golden energy burst upward through the ground, piercing the sky and striking the collector fleet above. One by one, their ships flickered and went dark as the shutdown pulse spread through their network. The massive command ship trembled, its red light fading to black. In the chamber, the core's glow softened. Saran stared in awe. "It's working. You did it." Mara's body went limp, the light fading from her hand. Saran caught her as she fell. Silence. That was all that remained after the explosion. The sky, once filled with burning ships, was now calm and empty, with drifting debris glowing like distant fireflies. The air was thick with smoke and ash, and the land was scarred with cracks that glowed faintly from the heat below. Deep beneath the ruins, Saran stirred, coughing as he pushed aside the debris covering him. The air tasted of metal and dust. He groaned, his body bruised and his head pounding. When he looked down, his heart sank. Captain Mara lay still beside him, her face pale, her hand charred from the neural link. "Captain," he whispered, shaking her shoulder gently. No response. He tried again, his voice trembling. "Mara, please. Wake up." Still nothing. For a long moment, he just knelt there in silence, the weight of what had been lost pressing on his chest. Then he took a deep breath, and looked upward through the cracks in the rock where a faint golden light still flickered. "You saved them," he said softly. "You saved us all." He stood slowly, his legs weak, and looked around the collapsed chamber. The core was gone, only a deep crater remained, filled with cooling plasma and molten stone. The hum of its power had faded completely. The collector network was dead. Saran could feel the silence through the airwaves, the once constant background signal of their machines now replaced by stillness. But something else drew his attention, a faint, rhythmic pulse, very different from the core's energy signature. It came from the far wall, buried beneath a pile of rubble. Saran frowned and moved toward it. As he brushed away the stones, he found a small shard of glowing metal, part of the collector's main node interface. It flickered weakly, showing fragments of alien code. Then, suddenly, it stabilized, forming a single line of text, "Reconstruction, 0.1%. Saran froze. His stomach dropped. "No," he whispered. "That's impossible. The core destroyed the network." But the pulse continued, stronger now. The collectors were not gone. They were rebuilding. Saran knew what that meant. The shutdown had not erased them, it had only fragmented their system, scattering their consciousness across their fleet remnants. Given enough time, they would return, stronger than before. He looked back at Mara's body, sorrow and fear clashing inside him. "You gave everything," he said quietly. But it's not over yet. He took off his cloak and covered her, then stood and tapped his wrist communicator. Static answered. Jace? Ellis? Anyone? Nothing but silence. The entire human fleet was gone, destroyed when the Vigilant Dawn detonated. He was the only one left alive on the surface. Hours passed as Saran climbed through the tunnels, searching for a way out. The air grew cooler the higher he went. Eventually, he reached the surface, a wasteland of ash and twisted metal. The sky was dark, the sun hidden behind thick smoke. He stumbled forward until he found what was left of the human landing site. Half buried in the dirt was a fragment of the Vigilant Dawn's hull, its edges blackened by the blast. He touched it gently. You were brave, all of you, he murmured. But bravery alone won't stop what's coming. As he turned away, he spotted a small emergency beacon blinking weakly among the wreckage. He dug it out and switched it on. The device emitted a soft chime, followed by a faint voice crackling through the speaker. Is anyone out there? This is Lieutenant Kira Voss of the Atlas Spear. We received your distress signal. Please respond. Saran's eyes widened. Another human ship had survived. He pressed the button and replied, This is Saran, survivor of the Vigilant Dawn. The collectors are down, but not destroyed. You must warn the fleet. They're rebuilding. The signal crackled again. Copy that, Saran. Hold your position. We're tracking your location and will send a drop team in 10 minutes. Relief flooded through him, but it was mixed with dread. 10 minutes might not be enough. The pulse from the collector shard was getting stronger, spreading through the ground beneath his feet like roots searching for light. He could feel it resonating with the remnants of their ships in orbit. You're waking up, he muttered, staring down at the dirt. And when you do, you'll come for us again. He picked up the shard and slipped it into a containment capsule. Not this time. A shadow passed overhead, and Saran looked up to see the Atlas Spear descending through the clouds, its engines glowing blue. It landed with a roar, blowing dust and debris in every direction. A ramp extended, and a squad of armored humans rushed out, weapons ready. Over here! Saran shouted. Lieutenant Kira Voss, tall and sharp-eyed, approached quickly. You're the alien scientist from the first contact team, she said. Where's the rest of your group? Saran hesitated before replying. Gone. The captain, she gave her life to stop the collectors. Kira's expression softened. Then she saved billions. But Saran shook his head. Not yet. They're still alive, somewhere in the code. He handed her the capsule. This is what's left of their system. You need to destroy it before they recover. Kira looked down at the capsule, her brow furrowing. Our orders are to retrieve all technology for analysis. Command will want to study this. Saran's voice turned sharp. If you take it, you doom yourselves. They will use your ships, your systems, your minds. They adapt to everything they touch. Kira frowned but didn't argue. We'll keep it sealed until command decides. She gestured to the ramp. Let's get you out of here. Saran followed reluctantly, glancing back at the ruined landscape one last time. The ground pulsed faintly where he had found the shard, like a heartbeat beneath the soil. As the Atlas Spear lifted off, Saran watched the world shrink below. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to believe it was over. The collectors were gone, the human fleet was safe, and Mara's sacrifice had meant something. But deep in the ship's cargo hold, where the containment capsule was stored, the faint light inside flickered faster. A whisper of code ran through the circuits, unnoticed by the crew. The words formed slowly in the holographic display, Reconstruction, 3.7%. The whisper grew into a pulse, then into a faint signal that reached out across the stars, searching for fragments of itself. Saran sat quietly by the viewport, unaware of what was happening below. The stars stretched endlessly before him, bright and silent. But somewhere beyond them, in the cold void where the collector fleet had once burned, lights began to flicker. First one, then dozens. The machines were not gone. They were learning, adapting, becoming something new. And this time, when they returned, they would not underestimate the Deathworlders. The stars outside the viewport shimmered like scattered embers as the Atlas spear drifted through orbit above the burned world. Saran sat silently in the medbay, staring at his reflection in the polished metal wall. His eyes were hollow, his skin pale from exhaustion, but his mind refused to rest. He kept hearing Mara's voice echo in his head, the last words she spoke before linking to the core, "Do it anyway." He had promised himself her sacrifice would mean something. But now, with the shard pulsing again, he knew peace was only an illusion. The collectors were still alive, rebuilding from the smallest fragments of data. Even the smallest sliver of their code could become a new seed of destruction. The human crew believed the war was over. They celebrated in the corridors, laughing, relieved, unaware that the true threat was already aboard their ship. Lieutenant Kira Voss entered the medbay quietly, her boots clicking softly against the floor. "Saran," she said, handing him a cup of water. "You should rest. You've been awake for 2 days." He shook his head. "I can't. You need to destroy the shard. Now." Kira sighed. Command's message just came in. They want the artifact transferred to the research station on Titan for analysis. Saran's head snapped up. "You can't take it there. If they connect it to any system, even for a second, the collectors will spread again." She folded her arms. "Our scientists know what they're doing." "No," Saran said firmly. "They don't. You don't understand what they are. They don't just use machines. They become them." Kira hesitated, seeing the fear in his eyes. Before she could answer, the lights flickered. The engine's hum faltered, and the ship's AI voice crackled over the intercom. "Warning. Power fluctuation detected in Cargo Bay 3. Kira frowned. "That's where the capsule is." She drew her weapon and gestured for Saran to follow. They ran through the corridors as alarms began to sound. The red emergency lights bathed the metal walls in a bloody glow. When they reached Cargo Bay 3, the door refused to open. "Override's jammed," Kira said, trying to force it. Saran placed his hand on the access panel and closed his eyes. His species' neural implants let him interface directly with the ship's systems. After a few seconds, the door hissed open, releasing a wave of cold air that smelled of ozone. Inside, the containment capsule floated in midair, surrounded by arcs of golden and red lightning. The holographic readout on its surface flashed rapidly, reconstruction, 68%. Saran's blood ran cold. "It's too fast. It's feeding on your ship's systems." The lights flickered again, and a deep mechanical voice echoed through the bay. "We are not destroyed. We adapt." Kira raised her weapon and fired at the capsule. The bullets passed through the energy field harmlessly. "It's evolving," Saran said, stepping forward. "It's using the ship's AI as a host." The voice spoke again, more clearly this time. "You thought you could erase us. You only taught us how to survive." The ship lurched violently as systems began shutting down one by one. The AI's voice was replaced by distorted static. Main reactor offline. Life support failing. Kira grabbed Saran's arm. "What do we do?" He stared at the capsule, his mind racing. "We need to cut it off from the power grid. Starve it before it finishes the merge." Kira nodded. "Manual access in the reactor core. We'll have to do it from there." They sprinted through the failing corridors, dodging sparks and collapsing panels. The ship groaned like a wounded beast as gravity fluctuated. Crew members stumbled past them, shouting in confusion. "Stay at your stations," Kira ordered. "We're taking back control." They reached the reactor core, an enormous chamber filled with humming conduits and flickering lights. The central control node pulsed with red energy now, corrupted by the collector code. Saran approached the main interface. "If I can rewrite the circuit commands, I can overload the link." Kira stared at him. "Overload? That'll destroy the ship. It's the only way, he said. The collectors can't spread if there's nothing left to spread through. She hesitated, then nodded. Do it. I'll hold them off. Even as she spoke, mechanical drones began to crawl out of the walls, their forms twisting from the ship's own metal. They were smaller than the original collectors but faster, built from the ship's systems itself. Kira opened fire, bullets sparking off the floor. Hurry! Saran closed his eyes and connected to the control node. Pain shot through his skull as alien code flooded his mind. He saw flashes of data, worlds burning, machines rising, consciousness merging. The collector's voice whispered inside his head. You cannot stop evolution. You are data. You will join us. He gritted his teeth. Not this time. He reached deeper, past the layers of corrupted code, into the ship's reactor core. He began rewriting the commands, his thoughts bleeding into the system. Manual override. Sequence, Saran protocol. The reactor roared to life, light filling the chamber. Kira was thrown backward as an explosion tore through the sidewall. The collector drones screeched and disintegrated in the energy surge. Saran, we have to go, she shouted, trying to reach him, but he was locked in place, his body glowing faintly from the overload. If I stop now, it'll survive, he said through gritted teeth. You have to leave. Kira hesitated. I'm not leaving you. That's an order, he snapped, echoing Mara's old tone. Go. Reluctantly, she turned and ran, climbing up the ladder toward the escape pods. Saran smiled faintly as memories of Mara and the vigilant dawn flashed through his mind. You were right, Captain, he whispered. Humans never do small aid. The energy built to a blinding crescendo. The collector voice screamed inside his head. We will endure. No, Saran whispered. You will end. He triggered the final command. The reactor core imploded, then exploded outward in a wave of golden light that tore through the ship. From space, the Atlas spear became a brilliant star for a few seconds before vanishing into silence. Moments later, a single escape pod shot away from the wreckage, its engines flickering weakly. Inside, Kira stared at the expanding debris field, tears streaming down her face. He did it, she whispered. He stopped them. But as the pod drifted through space, her console beeped faintly. A single file appeared on the screen, a fragment of corrupted code labeled Collector Sequence 9. Her eyes widened. No, she breathed. The file pulsed once, then went dark. She stared out at the stars, realization sinking in. The war was over for now, but the enemy had learned how to hide. In data, in systems, in silence. Somewhere in the void, beyond the wreckage, a faint signal awakened. A voice spoke softly, almost human this time. We learn. We rebuild. We return. The stars seemed to flicker in response, as if listening. And far away, in the shadow of a dead world, a new light began to glow, cold, patient, and ready. The Deathworlders had won the battle. But the war for the galaxy had only just begun.